Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. My name's Aaron. I am joined again and always by Mr. Ryan Nelson, the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management, and one of my good buddies. Ryan, how are you today?
I am doing well. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Ready to dive into another episode and, just continue to learn, continue to spend time with one of my good friends and hopefully share some of our knowledge or lack of knowledge with our listeners out there. So let's go ahead and dive into it if you're ready to go.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So this is going to be a fun topic. I was really excited to write this one. It's all about pet ownership and the financial costs that come with it. So I know, Ryan, and you could share it with the listeners, but you are a pet owner, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
And it's Nova is her name. And you want to give a little backstory about what she is?
Oh, she's a dog.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Oh, sweet. Yeah. What kind? How old? What are we working with here?
She is, I think, about 6. Lab border collie, around 6.
Nice. So you got her when she was pretty young too. Yeah. So you've had her for 6. That's crazy. You've had her for 6 years. That's wild to think about.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
That just blew my mind there for a minute. But awesome. Well, I'm also a proud pet owner. I got a cat named Reggie. He's about 11 years old. He's kind of a mean cat, if we're being honest, but he's our cat, and so love the guy to death. Him and I spend quite a bit of time together.
It's a Turkish van, correct?
Sure. Yeah. He sent me that the other day, and I was like, I don't know what that means. I had to look it up. But it looks like him if you just start the hissing. Yeah. But overall, I would say that pet ownership and owning pets is a monster thing here in the United States, a huge part of our culture all around the world, really, but we really hammer it home here in the United States. You see people go above and beyond for their pets, which is great. I do the same as well. But I'm curious, Ryan, about let's dive into the topic of what are some of the costs of pet ownership that people, one, might not be knowing, might not be thinking about, and kind of how that affects like the decision to how it affects their financials overall. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So before we dive into that, what do you think? Like how big do you think they project the pet industry to be in, let's say, 2030? So
2030,
5 years from
5 years from now, it's got to be just massive, man. It's got to be. I'm gonna say $500 million.
Ooh, that's a good guess. 500?
Yeah,
500 billion.
Oh my gosh, with a B?
Yeah. So they project in 2030, and by they I just mean Google's AI function.
Sure,
who knows who it is, but nor do I really care. But either way, it's just a huge industry, right? And it's like one of the fastest growing industries, I think. So to your point, we spend a whole heck of a lot of money on pets, right?
Yes.
And so we had an episode a few weeks back about home ownership. Mm-hmm. I actually kind of think about and approach this in a similar way.
Okay.
And so we'll talk about some of the upfront costs, some of the ongoing costs and stuff. But yeah, so obviously pets can bring a lot of joy. But many of us overlook the financial commitment of that pet. So anytime you get a pet, obviously there's more than just a financial commitment, but there is a financial commitment to that pet. And so I'll be a little facetious here, but financial planning isn't just for us and our goals, but our pets need it as well, right?
So 100%.
If we're getting an animal, we should probably do again a little facetious here, but a little bit of financial planning and honesty to make sure you can afford that pet. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of the initial costs. So there's adoption fees. So if you're going to a shelter, so you mentioned Nova earlier. I got Nova from, I think it was the Humane Society. And even from the Humane Society, she's not free. Mm-hmm. I think typical costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $250. And that's, again, if you're getting from a shelter. If you're buying from a breeder, I was looking at other dogs. We had Rhodesian Ridgebacks growing up. I was looking at getting purebred Ridgebacks.
Big dog.
Yep, big dog. But those are $3,000+.
Wow.
And I know there's other dogs that cost a whole heck of a lot more than that, right? So if you're getting from a breeder, you could be talking about multiple thousands of dollars to initially buy this dog. If you're getting from a shelter, it's going to be a fraction of that, but there's still some cost there. And then what I'll kind of still refer to as like upfront, you're going to have to spay or neuter that animal. I think most shelters, they'll come spayed or neutered, but if you're getting a dog from like a breeder or a cat, you're going to need to spay or neuter it. It's going to have vaccines. You should get it microchipped. You're talking another couple $100 to $1,000 there. And then you're going to need some kind of starter supplies, right? It's almost like the house when you have to buy the couch and stuff,
furniture,
right? Yeah, exactly. So you're going to need a dog bed. You're going to need maybe a crate. You're going to need leash. You're going to need food and water bowls, toys, litter box, right? There's just kind of all these like one-off expenses you need initially for the dog or cat, right? And so there's another couple $100. So you might spend a couple $100 on the adoption fees, a couple $100 on the first years of medical costs, and a couple $100 on sort of starter supplies. So it's reasonable to think you might be out $1,000+. Certainly, if you're buying from a breeder, much more than that. Sort of just right off the bat.
Yep.
Right. Then you obviously have ongoing annual expenses. These are a little harder, but I mean, I got some numbers here. So you're going to have food for the animal, right? That could be anywhere between $250 to $700 a year for food. It obviously greatly depends on what you're feeding them, right? I think Nova's food costs like $40 a month, approximately $40 a month. So you're talking $500 a year there, right? So kind of right in the middle of these ranges. And then, in theory, you should be taking them to their vet for some routine visits, kind of like what we do our routine medical checkups with our doctors. And then there's some preventative medicines. Maybe there's heartworm, there's flea, like there's tick medicine. I don't know if medicines. I'm not a vet. But there's like the flea prevention, tick prevention, heartworm prevention, right? Those could cost in the hundreds of dollars a year. There's, depending on the breed, some breeds actually, I think, have to be groomed. Otherwise their hair gets like
matted or whatever.
So if you're getting one of those breeds, then you're sort of committing to some grooming, right? Depending on your sort of philosophies, you may choose to do training classes, right? There's
Sure.
A few $100 more, right? There's certainly optional, but you may explore pet insurance. That's oftentimes somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $70 a month for this pet insurance. And then, you may also have costs for, if you're like traveling, you might have to board the animal. Or if you're busy, you might have to pay somebody to walk your dog, right? So there's these other expenses that, again, just not everybody's going to need all these expenses, but some people will need some of them. And a lot of them are expenses that people don't originally think about. Like doggy daycare is another one. A lot of people will take their dogs to doggy daycare, right?
Yep.
Again, none of those are necessarily required. But again, some people do choose to pursue them, and those are just costs that add up, right?
And I think that a good piece here too is like, you think about, like, you're speaking from personal opinion, like with a dog. Like I think about, like, I have a cat, and I would say that relatively speaking, you have some of the same costs. This isn't even thinking about like if you have a pet horse or something that,
for sure.
Something along those lines.
A horse is going to be expensive.
Like you have like, but I think a dog is a relatively good one to use because I don't know if it's the most common. I don't, and right now I would assume.
Yeah. Sure.
But like I think a dog is a good middle ground, because you could also have like a fish that.
True. Right.
But you can also have the other end of the spectrum as well too, for a really expensive pet or a really cheap pet. But I think a dog is a very it can really resonate with the listeners for something here too. So but I think these are their numbers are adding up.
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of thinking more along the lines of dogs and cats. Obviously, there's like birds and fish and all all stuff, horses. And I do think my gut tells me that cats are probably cheaper than dogs. Could be wrong there, but I don't know. But then, so those are all all those expenses I listed may not necessarily be like expected on the front end, but they're all expenses you can kind of plan for. Then there's going to be some really unexpected costs, like emergency vet visits. Your dog or cat gets hurt or does something that you just literally couldn't plan for, and you have that emergency vet visit. Really hard to put a cost on that, right? But typically, if you're taking them to an emergency vet, you're not getting out of there for less than $500, right?
Oh yeah, not at all.
Just walking in there. So then there's certain surgeries that they might have to have, right? There's chronic illnesses and medicine. There's a lot of animals who've been on medicine, medications for years, right? And that adds up. And so similar to the house, it's probably not a bad idea to have like a pet emergency fund, right? You should be sort of budgeting. If you have this added sort of responsibility, you should know like, okay, this is another thing that I have these added potential expenses for. Now, maybe a pet emergency fund is only like $1,000 or $2,000, right? It doesn't, I'm not saying it has to be 30 or 40, 50,000, right? But maybe you have $1,000 set aside. Okay, this can cover any emergency for my dog or cat, right?
Yeah.
And so I always think as you're sort of budgeting this, just including your pets in your monthly and annual budget is wise, right? It's just an expense that you have. So your dog's food or your cat's food, your dog's, annual visit, it's just another expense that you have. And I would think of it just budgeting it into your normal budget. I wouldn't do anything too complicated there. But using things like a sort of a pet emergency fund, maybe it's $1,000, doesn't have to be anything too crazy. If you're into pet insurance, if that's your thing, definitely do your due diligence in comparing the different providers. Also consider self-insuring, right? So again, if your emergency fund, let's say your personal, just normal emergency fund is at $50,000. That might be able to cover every expense for both yourself and your pet. And you may say, I don't really need a dog insurance. Sure. I got enough in my emergency savings total, right? So just consider self-insuring versus getting that pet insurance. And then obviously there's like some planning considerations around time and travel. How I kind of think of this circling back into financial planning is, I feel like people don't always think about this, but everybody thinks about their kids, right? Oftentimes, one of the most common things I say is, I'm going to retire after my kids move out of the house.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
And so it's very natural to like think, right?
That'd be great, by the way.
Yeah. But a lot of times people don't always think about their animals. And then they say, oh, like I have this retirement goal to get an RV and see all 50 states when I retire.
Right.
And it's like, okay, but you have a dog. I don't see how you're taking the dog in the RV. No. So you're going to board your dog for a year? Like, while dogs are not nearly as big of a commitment as say a child, it is a commitment. And then I do think the like time commitment of it needs to be calculated into your retirement plan as well. Right. So just something to think about there, which is interesting. And I find most people overlook.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to think about that of like, oh yeah, we're going to take this, even just you think about, we're going to take this week-long trip to wherever.
Yeah.
Immediately, my first thought in my mind is like, okay, cool. What are we going to do with our cat or our dog?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What's going to go? What's happening with that? Who's going to watch them? Like, and hopefully you'll have something in place for some things like that. But it is funny, man, to think about the. People mention, and I've had a dog, had dogs growing up, had cats growing up, had all sorts of animals, but right now just have the cat, thankfully. But people talk about like, oh, like I have a dog, like it's the same as like a kid or something like that. And I always say like, no, it's not. But there are a lot of similarities with it. Like that I would say that you have to think about that. If you're a pet owner, that's probably your first thought, like for these certain things. And that's how it's like.
I mean, I know I have a college savings account for my dog.
Yeah, no, naturally. Yeah. Man, she's very smart. Yeah. We're hoping for Harvard.
Yeah.
But I think that there's certain things that definitely play into like your financial planning with it of where you have to take into consideration your animal. And like you mentioned, the emergency fund or I think, people are like, oh, you don't think it happens. Or like for myself, like you don't really know how attached you get to these animals too.
Yeah,
like
I know.
You're like, a couple of years back, our cat Reggie got sick and I always said, I was like, oh, if it's too expensive, we're just going to, put him down at that point because we don't have the money to pay for it. Darn it if we didn't spend way too much money on this cat to make sure he was okay.
Yeah,
like
sure.
Immediately. Didn't even think about it. Like it wasn't even, it was cost came second. So like you can't underestimate the value of joy that animals can bring to you, but also like the financial cost that goes with them. And a lot of times you just have to be aware that, cool, where are we okay with like, or should we get a dog? Do we have the capacity to train it? Like, what do we want to do with this overall? And taking into those logical things of just the financial, once again, not super fun to do, but
Right.
it's necessary in the long run
Right.
if you're trying to plan well.
And like you said, I don't think like a dog is anywhere on the same level of a commitment as like a child, but there are some parallels, right?
Absolutely.
And like another one is like you get a dog, that dog, depending on the breed you get, that could have a 15, 16, 17 year, life. A kid is usually living at your house until they're like 18. Like, you may be looking at a similar time frame. We're not talking about financial expense, but time frame, right? And again, to your point, these animals do require a time commitment from you. So as you're doing financial planning and thinking and trying to solve about what you want, maybe it's travel, maybe it's whatever, you still need to plan. If you're getting a dog today, this is still impacting you 5 years from now, 10 years from now, potentially 15 years from now, right? So something where you should just be planning accordingly, both on the financial side, but also just on the like goals-based. Again, all of our financial planning here at Alchemy is always goals-based planning. So I would kind of think about that in the same terms as you're getting an animal. How does this affect your like goals-based planning, right? And it's both on the financial side and the time side. But obviously, like you said, they it can be emotional and it's hard to sometimes, you get tied to them for sure. So yeah,
just get tied to these things and you're like, oh man, like I saw this thing the other day. It was like, the first week of owning a cat or whatever, and your first day, the guy's like, all right, whatever, this cat's fine. Like, he's just hanging out.
Yeah.
Like, day 2, you're like, I still don't know what this guy's doing. Like, day 3, I'll die for you.
That's funny.
You're just like, and I feel like it just goes into pet ownership of like, we value our pets here, like, and for better or worse, that's kind of what we are, and they're a part of our lives, and so you should definitely plan financially for them, without a doubt. So
so I'll maybe close this out here by saying like, again, like I know I'm being facetious and it's kind of a joke, but also at the same time, there's like a half truth to this, like yes, you should have like a financial plan for your animal, right? Like you should plan financially. You should understand what the implications of getting that animal are. And there are financial considerations. So yeah, just, that should be a piece of your plan. Is it the biggest piece of your plan? No, of course not. Absolutely not. But it is an implication and it is a consideration. It is a piece of that plan. So don't forget to consider it.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. I love it, Ryan. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hang tight. We'll be right back with some personal fun. Hang tight.
And now, to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back, everybody, this side of the Fiscal Physical podcast. I feel like I say this every week, but I'm always very excited to ask you this question, Ryan, as I think it really is applicable to you overall. So I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite board game? If you guys don't know Ryan on a personal level, he's a game enthusiast, loves games of all shapes and sizes, but I specifically know that you really enjoy board games there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like board games a lot. Did you know I'm going to a weekly board game?
No, I didn't know.
Oh yeah. So I go to a board game like group every single week, and I play like all these new board games and stuff.
Really?
Oh yeah.
How'd you find that? Like, is it just?
Just kind of a long story, but just stumbled upon it, met some people, and heard about it. I was like, heck yeah, I like board games. I'll come, and then been going pretty much ever since.
Awesome. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's kind of funny. So like I love board games, but like these group of people play a lot more board games than I ever had, right? So they've played way more, and so they've exposed me to way more games. So real quick, just out of curiosity, could you guess who my favorite board game designer is?
No, I don't think I could. Yeah.
Okay.
I would just think Hasbro.
I know a lot of. So anyways,
maybe I don't play enough board games.
No, you definitely don't. But anyway, so Settlers of, I always refer to it as Settlers of Catan. Everybody else refers to it as Settlers of Catan.
I refuse to call it that.
Yeah.
It's Catan. It incites some riots.
But that was like my gateway game. I remember playing a ton of that in like college and stuff. We'd have like everybody like hanging out in the apartment playing Settlers. And so that was kind of my like gateway game. And that's like most people who play a lot of board games, that's like one of everybody's gateway games.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so it's kind of funny. So like a lot of people who play board games a lot don't want to play that because everybody always wants to play it.
Yeah.
And so kind of funny. But so Settlers of Catan or Catan, if you want to be proper.
Yeah.
It always will have sort of a special place in my heart.
Definitely.
I have the app on my phone. I play it like almost every day, probably.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Klaus Tuber is the designer of that game.
Oh, okay.
And so you may have heard jokes around about Klaus Tuber, but he's a cool guy. But as I've gotten exposed to more games, there's a board designer called Reiner Knizia, and he's designed, like, I think literally it sounds like hundreds and hundreds of games. I could probably find the number, but maybe approaching 1,000 games.
Wow.
But they're all like classic, what are called Euro style games, which is kind of like a Settlers of Catan type feel, a little less like Monopoly and Scramble, more like a Settlers of Catan type game.
Yeah.
And he's got tons of, he's made so many games. I've played a few of them that are just downright terrible.
Yeah.
but
well, you're going to have some stinkers if you do 1,000. You're not going to bat 1,000.
But a few of them are super, super fun. So I don't know, picking your favorite game, maybe like picking a favorite child, hard to do. But I'd say either way, Settlers of Catan has a special place in my heart, just because it's like one of my first ones. So yeah.
That's awesome that you're in like a board game group. That's super cool. Like you might be getting up there in age, or you just like know yourself like when you're in something like that you like to do. So
definitely maybe not the quote unquote coolest thing, but darn it, I have fun there every single time. Every single time I go, so I love it.
Yeah, it's really funny to think about, because I have a similar experience with Settlers of Catan. Like I studied abroad in Costa Rica when I was in college, and I met this guy named Chris Linton. Shout out Chris, always tunes in from Parker, Colorado. Love that.
Klaus Tuber.
Yeah. Yeah. And he introduced me to this game, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I played this before." I was like, "Oh, let's check it out," and I was just like addicted. It's just an awesome game. So if you guys haven't played Settlers of Catan, play it. Play it with somebody who knows what they're doing. I would recommend that the first time, but like it's still like I play that game. I don't play it every day, but I play it absolutely, probably weekly. I would say like on the weekend, like we'll bust out the Catan board and play.
We should get a Catan tournament.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's just phenomenal. So that would for sure. But I would say my OG game that I really enjoyed playing as a board game was Clue.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It's a great one. It's a classic. There's a lot more there's bluffing and skill involved with Clue that you don't really think about. Like that you can there's different ways to manipulate it that I've learned over the years that people don't know if they're novice Clue players. So it's a fun game, and they have so many variations these days of new age Clue, and there are different themes of it to where all the weapons are whatever they might. So it's cool that the house that they're in is it's in the AI room or whatever.
Sure,
certain
instead of the computer room.
Yeah, it's a fun game for sure. I think that was my one that holds a really special place in my heart too is Clue. That was always a fun one growing up.
It's a classic. I love it. Yeah, I got a kind of new take on a game that's kind of a new take on that is a lot more involved that you might like. So we'll have to have you guys over and try that on for sense.
Love that. Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Ryan, as always. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys learned something today, and I'll turn it over to you, Ryan, to lead us out here.
As always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening, and as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode, and consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.